Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. Today is Friday, March the 8th, 2019. It's 4 p.m. in New York. It's 1 p.m. in Los Angeles. It's 9 p.m. in London and Sydney, Australia. Good morning there. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. So wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And the only unhappy thing today is that my co-host, Linda Armstrong, is kind of under the weather. She's not feeling up to her normal self. She's an energy coach, and when your energy isn't up, you can't be much of an energy coach. So she's going to kind of take the afternoon off. But she's done a wonderful favor for us. She has sent a good friend of hers, who's also a life coach, to sit in for her today, and I'm going to welcome her here. So her name is Liz Gracia. Have I got that right? Gracia? Am I pronouncing it right?
Gracia.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Gracia. Okay. So Liz, well, first of all, hello, and second, thank you
Hello.
for joining me today. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Nice to
Glad to
meet somebody new.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a lot of that this week, and I've been enjoying it. It's always fun when we have new people coming on. And plus, I mean, probably about 70% of my co-hosts are life coaches, and this week I've interviewed, I think you'll be the third or fourth extra new life coach. So I am like inundated with life coaches right now, and it's a wonderful thing. I
Well,
often
I'm
say
not really
I'm
a
the best
life
coach.
coach, Walt,
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay.
but
Well, that's all right. I mean, I
yes.
have I have co-hosts who aren't life coaches. I thought you were. I apologize.
No,
So
that's okay.
okay. So actually, maybe I should take a step back. And why don't I let you tell us who you are instead of me
Okay.
guessing who you are? That's probably a better way to do this.
Oh, well, that sounds good. So, as Walt said, my name is Liz Gracia, and I'm founder of something that's called the Mind, Body, Spirit Network.com. And that's how I met Linda Armstrong, who I'm subbing for today. Linda is a member of this network, and what I do is I help alternative and holistic transformational types of professionals with their online marketing efforts, and I do that within the context of a conscious community because I understand the power of networks and community online. So that's what I do there. But I am like not officially, but I do it for fun, a consciousness coach. And
Now, what is a consciousness coach? What exactly is
I
that?
study consciousness and I understand where power exists in consciousness. And there is a relationship between the law of attraction and the laws of consciousness. And who
Sure.
I studied is Dr. David R. Hawkins, who wrote a book called Power versus Force, which there's a big following of people that understand. When you understand where true power is, then you can apply the law of attraction more consciously, so to speak.
Right. Right.
So
Sure.
that's kind of what I bring to the table today is I love to share my understanding of consciousness and how it applies to the law of attraction. And there is a lot of crossover there, so people will, because a lot of people are trying to apply the law of attraction, but they're not quite,
Oh yeah.
they're getting what they don't want, as you
Yeah. Oh,
know.
lots of that.
Because
Oh
we
yes.
humans like to focus on what we don't want
We're good
and
at
to
that.
complain and point at it. I know. We like to wrestle it to the ground, like Esther would say,
We do.
or Abraham. I'm going to wrestle that one to the ground. Let's just do that and be miserable.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, I agree with you. I got to ask you. One of my co-hosts, her name is Cindy Chavez, and she's wonderful. She and I have been doing a lot of studying on the Wednesday afternoon podcast of the material of Neville Goddard, and Neville Goddard is very much also into consciousness. So I'm wondering, is there an overlap there between him and your guy?
Yes, and in fact, I have a monthly book review group on video that my network does, and someone just
Mhm.
brought up Neville Goddard. But you know who I was reading who reads all about him is Wayne Dyer, mentions him all the time.
Oh, that's true. Yes, right.
And he talks a lot about Neville Goddard. And Wayne talks about sharing his books, Neville Goddard's books, with his kids, and his kids are like, "I don't get it, Dad." So I'm like, okay, people don't get consciousness because it's like it's not really concrete.
Well,
So
plus
I have
Goddard
to
is
pick him
hard.
up now that you're. What's
I
that?
mean, Neville Goddard is hard. He really is
Yeah, I've heard
because
that. Yeah.
he was a very devout Christian, but
Uh
his
huh.
take on Christianity and Christian teaching was very different from what traditional churches would teach. It was different
Okay.
from the Catholic Church, and it was different from what Baptist churches would teach and the various Protestant churches. Because for him, God and Jesus and the kingdom of heaven are all psychological symbols for consciousness and imagination. So
Yeah.
everywhere that you have direct, we call it the Neville decoder ring. So everywhere
Oh.
you have one, you can do a direct word substitution, and now you get the true meaning of what he's talking about.
Now, is he from the early 1900s, Walt? Or do you know?
He was an actor who acted in New York City in the 1920s, and then
Okay.
he met the way the story goes is he met this mystic from the Middle East named Abdullah. Not much is known about Abdullah, but Abdullah was the one who explained to him the mystic understanding, so to speak, of the Bible and of Christianity. And
Okay.
that became the basis for what Neville taught. And then Neville did his teaching starting in the 1930s through the early 19 mid 1960s, something like that. And he
Okay.
passed in the early 1970s. So he's kind of like in the
Okay.
middle of the
At
20th
least
century.
somewhat contemporary. So,
Yeah.
so what I understand from what I've learned, Walt, is that he's speaking higher truths. He's speaking of higher consciousness, and Dr. Hawkins talks about it this as well. If you're not understanding it, it's because you're not even there yet. We're not we as a planet are not even close to being of highest consciousness that can exist on the. I mean, there's a level of consciousness that you can get to, and then you leave the body because you can't go any higher. So as a planet, we're not even close, which is why some of these teachings are you don't get it and you're not there yet. So,
Well, it
and
also helps to have a co-host like Cindy Chavez who's really studied this stuff, and she's
oh,
made
good.
it simple enough that I mean I've kind
Oh,
of followed along. Now. I'm getting it now, and at
oh,
first
good. Yeah.
well, plus I also had, and she kind of has a similar thing here too. I had a negative thing where the church was concerned. I actually rejected and pushed the church away when I was in my teens,
Yeah.
and kind of retained a sort of resentment over the years. So I didn't even want to look at all that stuff for the longest time.
Right.
And studying this stuff gave me a way to come back to it in a way that I didn't have to be hostile anymore. I could actually feel a little bit of friendliness because now it could make some sense to me, whereas the way it was taught before made no sense to me at all.
Right. Yeah. Resistance doesn't help. You should know that by now.
No
Resisting
kidding,
anything.
really?
Yes. Like, really? Can I point and hate and just hate and hate and hate and resist? Sure you can.
Yeah,
See
you
what
can do it
shows
as
up
long as
for
you
that
want to.
one.
Yeah, right.
Right. So what I was drawn to you guys when I read your about page because you're here to have fun and be positive.
Yes. Oh, and we have
And
lots of fun. This show is
good,
all about having fun and laughing and not taking ourselves too seriously and just
definitely.
but learning and trying to share our knowledge and
Yeah,
share it with each other and pick stuff up from each other and
yeah.
it's a wonderful journey. I've really enjoyed it very much. So,
So I
no-
feel like Walt, with all my studies of consciousness, I feel like I have come here to make it simpler as well. It's like, all right,
mhm.
let's dumb it down.
Yes.
Not to be insulting, but like honestly, if this is high level stuff, you're like, we got to bring it way down so that we can get it, and just
Well,
like kind of
there's
shift.
nothing insulting about that. That's just
So
you learn at the level that you're at. That's all there is to that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
There's a
everybody's
lot
at
of
a
levels too, by the way.
There are. Yeah.
Many
I,
levels.
I kind of learned you don't have to be intimidated by any of it. It may even if
Mhm.
you aren't getting it yet, you can just kind of trust that you're going to get it soon, and just keep
Yeah,
listening to LOA today, and we'll bring in more and more experts to help
exactly.
you
Oh my God,
understand.
Walt, I'm going to learn so much today. Let me tell you.
I do it. It's my regular joke, and it isn't so much a funny joke anymore. It's more like I like to tell it. I'm the best coach man in America. I have
Oh
more life coaches talking to me every single week than anybody else does.
my God,
So
you're getting so much good stuff there,
yeah,
Walt.
oh, it's incredible. I mean, Linda
What's
is
really this
amazing.
going on here? You've asked for
Absolutely.
something and you're getting it through this in
Are
many ways.
you're not kidding. I'm telling you, it really is true. Yeah,
All
and
right,
it's
so
wonderful.
we're putting it out there together that this is going to turn into something bigger for you. I like that.
Cool.
Yes.
I like that. Really, really
I'm
good.
pretty good at projecting stuff onto people and saying, guess what? So just watch out, be prepared.
I can hardly wait.
That's all I'm saying.
No,
All
I'm
right.
serious. Over the last 4 or 5 months, that's been a regular message of mine. I want more listeners. I want to get this bigger and bigger and bigger. I want to reach millions of people.
All
So
right, then there you have it. You just said it out loud.
yeah, we're
Don't
about
put a
to
block
25.
up now. Don't like put on the
That's
brakes.
right.
No brakes. Take the brakes. Have you seen that insurance commercial when where a guy goes in to get his brakes fixed, and then the brake
Remind
guy says, so the guy goes in to get his car fixed, his brakes, and he says to the mechanic, "Do you do a good job at fixing brakes?" He goes, "Yeah, but nothing's gonna stop you." So
Oh,
anyway, the point was, point being, you don't have to put on your brakes because something will, get in your way, like, a nice little offer to have millions of people show up. And then
this
you'd be
is
like, what do I do now? I'm talking to a million people. Oops.
well, I would imagine that's kind of the direction you're headed with your institute, isn't it? Because I mean, you brought all these people in who are a variety of different experts, and I don't even
Yeah.
know. I know what Linda does, but I'm not sure what the others do.
Oh, we have a mix of like a medical medium, which is super fascinating. Medical mediums. We have kind of corporate wellness meditation specialists that are just like killer with guided meditations and Ayurvedic stuff. I've got this really super interesting 20-year vet. He's an ex-army um, warrant officer, and he went to Iraq 5 times. I'm like, dude,
Wow.
holy crow! And he
Yeah.
went through a lot. He had a lot of suffering. So he's turning it around. And he's becoming a transformational leader, and he's like so like raw and just
Mhm.
telling it like it is. But he's really
That's good.
awesome to listen to. He's starting his own YouTube channel. So my
Very cool.
intention is to attract really gifted healers and shifters and thought leaders, change agents, and give them a platform. Because they're
Hmm.
not marketers, any of them. So I help them
Well, there aren't. I
on
mean,
the
I've
marketing
marketed all my
side.
life, and I'm still learning how to do the darn thing. So, I
Right?
mean,
Yes.
it's not an easy thing. Online marketing is the most difficult, simple thing in the world. It truly is.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts.
There are.
So I'm
Yes.
kind of I'm like the healer's marketer because I'm a healer myself, like unwitting. I'm an unwitting healer and mystic, but I also do some business related stuff too. So I'm like the king
Mhm.
combo for those alternative types. I'm like, just
Well,
forget about your marketing, give it to me, I'll take care of you. You just got to let it in.
well,
Their
healing
job is to your job, let it in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but healing is going to be good for that, isn't it? I mean, because part of
Yeah.
healing covers a wide range of things, and one of the things that you can heal is your feeling of frustration or inadequacy or whatever that you can't get your own business out there. That needs healing.
Yes. In fact, I have a client, I mean, a member. She's been an acupuncturist for 30 years. She's like, we call her a spiritual elder
Mm,
because she's in her 70s now, but now she's coaching other healers to market their businesses in this really interesting holistic way because she's they call that 5 elements acupuncturist. So they look at all 5 elements of the earth, and she's kind of incorporated that into your business. It's like, oh, what a great, wow, I love that. So
absolutely.
So your the marketing part of your business, Walt, would be your fire element. What's the
Oh,
fire of your
okay.
business? Yeah.
Okay.
And the metal is
Yeah.
the money element.
Right.
The what's the first one? Anyway, there's water, metal, earth, wood. I forget them all now, but each element represents a different part of your business. And she made a really excellent point that it's everything in consciousness is a living system.
Mm.
Your business, your LOA today, is a living, breathing entity, whether you're aware of it or not.
That
So,
almost gets scary.
no, I think it's kind of cool.
Well, I guess it depends which way you take it. You can take it as it's this wonderful, beautiful being that's growing up, or you could treat it as, oh
Yes,
my God, it's this monstrosity that's building up. It could be either way.
yes, yes. Let's not go there.
No, that's probably not the best way to go. I agree with you.
Right, right. I mean, you're all about the fun, so that's already the essence of what you're wanting to do. So I don't
Yes.
think there's a monster in there unless you get in the way.
Well, I mean, interesting thing about monsters. Monsters are actually are. way of kind of metaphorically describing contrast.
Yes. Good.
That's really what they are, you know? So
Yes.
how are you going to treat them? I mean, like, um, we've been working on we're actually developed, I mentioned this to you before the podcast. We're actually developing a fictional story. One of my co-hosts, Alex King, and I started this about a month ago. And then this morning, she and I and Tom Wells were kind of fleshing it out some more. And the idea is to create a fictional series that we can include as like a segment here on the podcast that's it's kind of like a TV program or an old style radio program, but done in podcast format.
Okay.
And it would have the same kind of drama as anything else. It might be more like along the lines of a romantic comedy, but it would also have dramatic aspects to it. And I got to tell you, I mean, we were fleshing out the characters today. These characters are really dysfunctional people. So talk about creating a monster. But where we're going with it is, once we get it all fleshed out, we create out, these various subplots and so forth. The idea is to one at a time start working them through therapeutic processes so they can start to grow out of them.
I love that. That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun,
That's a lot of fun. That's
and what we're
excellent. So
finding,
you guys will be the actors. You'll have a written script, and you'll be the
I
actors of
don't know
this
who the actors are.
functionality, or
Maybe I don't know yet.
okay,
I think to a certain extent I'll rely on my sister because, like I said, my sister has a theater background.
okay.
She's been a playwright and she's been a director and so forth. So I'll probably talk to her and get her ideas about well, can we use any of my current co-hosts? Do we need to reach outside? Who would we reach out to? I mean, I don't know the answers.
All right. So there's a lot of moving parts and variables.
Well, it's like anything else with the law of attraction. You don't want to spend all your time figuring out the how,
Right.
right? So
Yes.
we're just diving in. We're just starting to create the thing and
Yeah.
see where
Just
it
start
goes.
creating. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a creative. That's a lot more juice and creativity than
Well, I'm
trying
telling
to
you,
figure something
I
out.
was going through. I don't normally play back all the episodes because it would take too long. I mean, I got 10
Yeah.
episodes a week that I'm doing, but I was playing through this episode today. I've got 5 pages of notes so far off of that episode, trying to piece together all the pieces that we've gathered. And I mean, these characters they're scary. I mean, the lead protagonist. This is a woman who is a talent agent in Los Angeles who is recently divorced, has 2 kids, and her own problem that she has is she grew up in a family where her mother was something of a flirt. Her father was a cheater. He was constantly cheating with other women, and those are her role models. And the only thing that
Oh,
she learned about how to deal with relationships is how to flirt. So flirting is her entire model of how to do relationships. And of
oh,
course, that leads to her having broken relationship after broken relationship because she doesn't know what the inner workings of a relationship is. Add in the
oh,
fact,
that's a good
yeah,
one.
yeah. Now add in the fact that this woman is not only unclear about how to do relationships, but she's a talent agent. She spends a lot of time on red carpets. She works with the stars because she lives out in Los Angeles in Hollywood land. And so she wants to be Mrs. Glamour. She wants to be, or Miss Glamour, whichever way you want to look at it. She wants to be the glamorous one. She's actually kind of a plain average woman, but she does everything she can to make herself glamorous and attractive and so forth. And so it all becomes about the surface, about the superficial aspect of who she is and how she can flirt with somebody. And add into the fact that because she's got this family background, she also is unwilling to dive into the internal relationship because she's angry at her father and her mother provided no guidance at all. So she doesn't know how a good relationship works. And that because she's angry at her father, she's also playing that out with the men that she meets. So she has this love-hate relationship, push me, pull you kind of thing with the men that she's meeting. And so who does she draw into her life? Married men who are players. And so she's in this current relationship with a guy she doesn't know is married. And I mean, it's turning into a soap opera at this point.
It is a soap opera. So
Yeah.
where's the lesson in there? How's the lesson going to come through?
We started to flesh that out toward the end of this morning's show. And where we're going with it is she has a kind of a complete crash in her life because she learns that the guy she's now seeing is already married. This guy has also developed a relationship with her daughter, her 10-year-old daughter, and her daughter, I mean, like a father-daughter type relationship.
Okay.
And now, because it's been revealed that he's married, her daughter is now crushed by what's going on. And on top of that, her daughter's father who is a Hispanic man and who is very traditional Hispanic. So he's the kind of person who believes in a traditional family unit, but in the old world way. So the woman should be in her place. The woman's role is to be the homemaker and take care of the kids, and the father's role to go out and, it's the old style. And he's running into the fact that he's now in America, and that kind of clashes with everything that goes on in America. But he's still trying to stick to that role. He takes his son out on their boat all the time, and he's constantly showing him what the man does out on the ocean and bringing in the seafood and all that kind of thing. But that's not for the daughter. So the daughter is now alienated from her father because her father won't spend any time with her, alienated from the new man in her mother's life because that new man is now a married man, and so he's basically proven to be a cheat and a liar. And her mother is now falling apart, so her mother's not available to her. So Lana is basically falling apart. So now there's two crises going on at the same time.
Yes.
So Nance, who is the main character, I mean, her life is about to collapse, and she doesn't know what to do, and so she ends up in therapy, and that's where the whole thing starts to come back together. Because the therapist is teaching her how all this works, bringing it all out of her and bringing out her emotions about it, and then helping her tie together how the whole thing is working, and then coaching her into, how can you put your life back together again while teaching her LOA principles.
Okay. All right. So who's going to therapy, the mother or the young girl? Or
The
both
mother.
of them?
Well,
Okay.
initially the mother. Eventually, I think they all end up in some sort of coaching situation, but
Okay.
initially it's the mother. Yes.
Okay. And then that leads into all your law of attraction coaches, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's kind. I mean, there's actually more to it. Like I said, I've got 5 pages of notes on this thing, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the upshot of what we have so far.
Okay. So that could go on for a year, that storyline,
Oh, easily. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you thinking of
And
having different storylines though, like kind of like a movie that has three different stories
probably.
going on at once? Yeah.
Well, we have the two storylines started so far. There's the mother's storyline and the daughter's storyline.
Okay. Got it.
And in fact, when one of the things we talked about was how when the mother is now entered into the coaching or therapy or whatever it is, and she is discovering these pieces of how her psychology is put together, how the tapes in her mind are playing, and so forth. Simultaneously, her daughter is playing out the same thing in her life. So we're
Yeah.
shifting back and forth between the two scenes of the mother and the daughter basically mimicking the mother and not realizing it. Now you got
Maybe you
two
could
plot
bring in
lines
the
going.
cheating husband as the third story.
Give me an idea.
So he was getting bonded with this 10-year-old and he's cheating on his own family. So he's got to come through his own kind of realization himself. Like, what's going on here? What am I doing? Why am I, you know, my family
Well,
not
we do.
good enough? Or I don't know. There's another story there, though.
Well, there is one. I mean, it's certainly at least a subplot because he's a pretty insecure guy. I mean, he's a player, but he also is very, very tied to his quote real family because he has a wife and kid, and
Right,
he does everything he can to keep them from knowing about this other life that he's got going on there.
right.
But he
So,
desperately needs them because without them, he has no sense of himself. So that's the only sense of himself that he has.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's three stories right there.
Yep.
That's enough to get you started.
Well, then we also have Nance's ex-husband, Miguel, because he's the one who was brought
Oh,
up in Mexico.
hmm.
He's the one who thinks that the wife should be staying at home and the man should be out in the world, the old world style of thinking. So now he's coming face to
Yep.
face with how that works in American culture, or more precisely, how it doesn't work in American culture. So that's his storyline. And then his son is trying to learn to be like his father, but that's clashing with what all his friends are experiencing and telling him about. So he's really confused about what's going on in his life. So we actually have about 5 different storylines going on.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to invite you guys to understand, to check out Power versus Force,
Okay.
because when you understand them, there's a map of consciousness. And what you're talking, when I hear stories or I watch movies, I now look at it from levels of consciousness because I know what they are. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
look at that level of this is where they're operating from.
So tell us
So,
about it.
so you talked
In the
about
context of
plan.
what we're
Yeah,
talking.
we'll talk about so the map. Let's just talk about the map real quick.
Okay.
The map of consciousness is the scale from 0 to 1,000. and
Okay.
it's a logarithmic scale. So
Mm-hmm.
1 on the map of consciousness is 10 to the first power.
Mm-hmm.
200 is 10 to the 200th power.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a mathematician and you did math and exponential stuff, you know that the higher you get, the more quantum it
That's
gets. It's getting huge as you go up the map, right?
yeah.
So the highest level of consciousness a human being can operate at is 1,000. And that's what I put together Buddha and Jesus.
That's clever.
Judah,
That works.
they already put themselves together. They already know they're the same one.
I love it.
So Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all of the avatars throughout history, many of them calibrated at 1,000, which is, kind of outstanding. The level of consciousness of 200 is where there's a turnaround from negativity to power. So at
Hmm.
200, when you hit 200, now you're positively creating and you have power. 200 and below is all the negative emotions: anger, fear, righteousness, pride, doubt, shame, blame, all of that stuff is
Mm-hmm.
energetically a toilet bowl. So it's all a downward pull,
I love the
right?
metaphor.
So when you spoke about glamour, glamour is actually negatively oriented energetically as opposed to beauty.
Mm-hmm.
So a cool little twist is for the glamour girl to understand there's no power in that. And you wouldn't necessarily go into this because it's a higher consciousness, but
Right,
it'd
right.
be kind of a simple realization that her beauty and inner beauty has way more power and appeal to everyone that matters in her life than glamour. Glamour is really a needy type of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not of higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hit 200, 200 is the level of courage, and this is typically I'm noticing a lot with coaches. Coaches want to get you into courage onto some topic. You got to step into courage, and when you do, now you have power.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can actually do something about it. But a really important thing to understand is that we as human beings are all levels of consciousness on different topics.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Okay.
topics we're in the crapper on, right? Like we don't like our bodies, we don't like how much money we have, whatever.
Right.
This woman is, she's stuck on glamour, so she's stuck in a lower level consciousness on her own identity. How does she
Mm-hmm.
identify herself?
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to look at the different levels and see where they're at. So to bring her from this feeling to have to be glamorous into her own inner beauty that would be a lesson in consciousness. It's like, oh, there's a different feel. Could be kind of interesting.
Well, it
So
is. I mean, it has to be because in order to make that transition, you have to, first of all, learn what that other part of consciousness is. You have to understand how that even works. So, yeah, it has to be a
yeah,
consciousness journey.
yeah. So just so you know, the level of consciousness of the planet is 207. So
What does that tell us?
207. It says we've just I think it happened maybe 15 years ago when the we made a quantum leap in consciousness on the planet from like 190 or so to make a jump to 207 is huge. So something happened. There was a big shift in consciousness so that now we're not going to destroy ourselves. A
Good to
planet
know.
that operates with the technology we have, under 200, we will destroy ourselves. But Hawkins is like, for somehow we made it so that we don't have to be concerned about that unless we take another nosedive in consciousness. So it's just kind of interesting to know. And as you move up the map, when you get up to 500, this is another interesting point, and there's a couple of places. Let's start at 350 because Esther and Abraham talk about being willing to accept you're the creator of your own consciousness. She says that all the time, right?
Right. Yep.
We're just trying to get you guys to be willing to accept you're the creator of your own consciousness. It always says it. On the map of consciousness, that is comes in at 350. So that's a quantum leap up from courage, right? To be willing to accept you're the creator of your own mess is
Right.
essentially what we have to accept now. Like, most
Exactly.
humans are making a mess of their lives because they don't know any better. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're willing to take responsibility and stop blaming anything outside of you, you've come into a significant amount of power,
Mm-hmm.
like
Okay.
huge. All right. And this is also the level of consciousness that is required to solve problems. You got to be in the 250 range to solve a problem significantly. So that's good to know as well.
Okay.
Like you look at our political, I'd like, every president should have a consciousness advisor because
That would be interesting.
because because you can measure someone's suggested solution. It's measurable what the level of consciousness is, and if it's like below 200, it ain't gonna solve a problem. It's gonna cause a problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you kind of gotta operate. Anytime you're trying to solve a problem, like you're trying to come up with a solution here, Walt, for how to get your LOA today out there.
Mm-hmm.
You got to kind of step into the power of 350 and say, okay, I got to take responsibility with this, and you got to call on higher consciousness. Like asking it is given. I'm playing with this right now, Walt. I'm like, I'm calling in higher consciousness all the time, and I don't need the highest because I've hit pretty highs, and it's a little scary if you don't
Okay.
know any better. When you're in this very high state of consciousness, this is another part of my story. I hit very high. I've been in the presence of what I can figure right now of about 850.
Wow.
And that presence, it's astoundingly, profoundly beautiful, but it's not of this world. So you can be a little, if you jumped there like I did, it can be a little scary, and that's a whole other story. So anyway, I call in higher consciousness. I don't call in that high. I'm like, I don't need to be that high, you guys. I talk to my friends. I appreciate that level. It's huge, but I don't have the foundation for it. I don't have the
So,
energetic foundation. You got to build your foundation.
okay.
Making leaps like that is where you get into that roller coaster. You're like, ooh, that's not any fun either. So anyway, so I wanted to talk about 350 because this is a law of attraction audience, and that's what Esther and Abraham are talking about, which means you gotta really make a leap in your own consciousness and accept. You gotta stop pointing outside yourself and blaming everyone and everything else beyond you, which is like a huge step.
It is.
And even Dr. Hawkins says this is a gateway to higher consciousness. Are you willing to do that or not? If you're not, you're going to stay below there. So the next level of consciousness that would be of interest to everybody, because we're all of the mind, is 400, which is the level of the mind. And it's the level of reason and rationality. And there's a lot of power in that. And there's a lot of power in the mind, too. So, and this is always a good one for people to know. The body is 200 on the map of consciousness. The mind is 400. Guess who's more powerful? Significantly. Walt, that's a question for you.
Oh, well, it sounds pretty straightforward to me. I mean, 400 is bigger than 200, so
Yeah, especially exponentially, right?
especially
People got to
exponential.
remember this is not a linear progression. This is an
Right.
exponential one.
Yeah.
So that mind of ours is very powerful. And if you're going to choose to focus it on negativity, watch out. Be very
Yeah.
this is where be careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
because that mind can manifest way better, immensely better than you're aware. And if you're putting a
See a
lot,
lot of insight.
thankfully most of us have a mixed bag. We're a little bit down here, we're up here, we're in the middle. We're not like focused so heavily on negativity. But if you do, watch out.
Well, in public life, I mean, when you look at the public realm, you can see a lot of stories that are along that line that are
Yeah,
basically, they're careening from one crisis to the next constantly.
yeah, it's kind of yeah. Right now, it's a bit of a lot of like I know better than to listen to the news. Like I just walk away. I don't want to even get because what's interesting is Dr. Hawkins and Law of Attraction talks about whatever you put your attention on, it's an impersonal energy field. There's
Hmm.
no judgment.
Right.
It's impersonal. So if I'm going to focus on negativity, consciousness is like, okay, here you go. Let me show you. Here, you're giving a lot of attention to that. Let me give it to you.
Very
So it's
true.
kind of interesting that a lot of us like to blame God for punishing. Why is God punishing me? It's like God's not punishing you. You're giving your attention to something you don't want, and then life is non-judgmental and just assuming that's what you want because you keep looking at it. So
That's where
So
Neville's teaching. It's interesting because Neville teaches that God is consciousness. So you do a
yeah,
little word replacement, and now it's consciousness is punishing me. Like, oh darn, I'm tripping myself again.
right. But there's a different level. There's so many levels of consciousness, right? So you've got to choose the one you want to play in. That's
Mm,
why I have the map. I look at the map. I'm like, all right, where am I on this map? And if
hmm
I'm down low, I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to look somewhere else. I got to distract yourself. I need a distraction, as Esther would say, or Abraham. But a good point about the 400 mind is also really basic. Is whatever you're telling your body, the body believes. The thought
That's
about your body, the body believes. So, oh, I'm going to die of cancer. Okay. The body's like, all right, let me help you with that. Or I'm
hmm
fat and ugly. Okay, let me show you what that looks like.
hmm
As opposed to
hmm
loving and honoring the body. And treat Dr. Hawkins likes to treat the body like a pet because at higher consciousness, it is. It's not the you are not the body at a higher level of consciousness at all. So
Let me ask you
if
a
you,
question. Let me
yeah,
ask you a question. Bringing in the concept of subconsciousness. Now, this is
yeah.
a concept where some people say, well, consciousness and subconsciousness, they're really the same thing. It's just two different ways of looking at the same thing. Others say they're two separate things. Some people say that the body is where the subconscious mind is. Where does this particular approach that you're talking about, does it even include subconscious, or is it not part of it, or how does it work?
Well, I think it's probably part of it, but the subconscious mind is kind of giving you what you want. This is like free will. In fact, I just today I found this guy, Dr. Bradley Nelson. Have you ever heard of him? Does that
No, I
sound
don't know
familiar?
that. No.
He wrote a book and he has some stuff on Gaia.com, some interesting
Okay.
videos about the emotion code. He's talking about emotions and the subconscious. So he's saying the subconscious is aware of everything that you've ever thought, interacted with, experienced, everything.
hmm
And if you have a traumatic event, for example, there's energy in the body that gets stuck. And so we have all this emotional baggage that's getting stuck in the body that he's talking about how to work your way through it. And I think it has to be brought into conscious awareness. The subconscious has it. And I guess, at another level, the subconscious is you're here to experience this. So who am I to get in the way? I'm going to let it, you're going to feel, you're going to see what happens. This is what happens as being a human. And
Right.
then when you get conscious, you're like, okay, I got to bring the subconscious to awareness. So I'm willing to look at it and bring it into awareness. I guess they're two different levels, they're two different approaches.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
guess
Okay.
based on things I've seen. Yeah.
Well, it adds up. I mean, it sounds like the concept hasn't really been developed a lot in Hawkins' approach in his program, so to speak.
Well, it has. I mean, he's friggin' brilliant.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't fully understand everything he's talking about. He was like an esteemed psychiatrist with the largest psychiatric practice in Manhattan
Really?
for many years. Yeah, he's no dummy. And then he took on the science of consciousness. For decades, he's been studying it, doing the research, getting the data together, and then sharing his talks. He's awesome to listen to. He's funny, and he's of highest consciousness. He has experienced what I have for ongoing periods of time. So he operates from a very significantly much higher level of consciousness, though he has passed. He passed about 4 years ago.
Linda just signaled me that she's been commenting like crazy, which she has. I've been trying to follow the comments while we've been having our
Uh,
conversation.
yeah, go
Um,
ahead, follow on. I knew she was on there.
and I won't try to repeat all of it, but she did make a couple of comments to Jeffrey, who's also one of our live stream listeners.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
she was she let's see, where was I coming to? Oh, she says, yes, Liz, thank you. This is why I use the gate modality. It's all about releasing from the cells of the body. Totally works, she says.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so Dr. Bradley is talking about, I mean, Dr. Hawkins talks about it too, but Dr. Bradley is kind of taking it a step further in my understanding of how to actually release some of this stuff, and which is what Linda's doing.
hmm
So Hawkins realized that you've got to let go of your own negativity and all your baggage. but some of it's buried so deep you don't know how to get to it. And that's where Linda and other healers like her can get to it. It's like, let's get to it and see where is it, and help to release it. And I think there's I'm feeling like you've got to recognize some aspects of that, those buried things. I don't know that you can just let them go. Some of them may require conscious awareness.
Well, it's been an education for me co-hosting with Linda on Friday afternoons because
Oh,
she's been introducing me to a lot of these concepts
oh
and
yeah.
and helping me to even just connect energetically because I was never really good at doing that connection before. Now I'm getting it, and like she says, it's always been there, but I never really realized what it was that I was experiencing, and so she's helping me to understand
Right.
that. But
Oh, good.
it's quite the education. You know,
Yeah.
I'm learning more and more. I've actually gotten to the point now, under her guidance, but I've gotten to the point where I can actually feel my aura like 3 or 4 feet out. Like,
Oh,
oh, this
oh
is
yeah,
great. I love this.
yeah. So while we have Linda Armstrong on the line, I do want to make a comment
Sure.
that's related to her. So we talked about the mind is at 400, and I want everyone out there to stop telling your body it's bad. Start loving on that body of yours because the body is way weaker than the mind. So I want to
Hmm.
make sure to get that one across. And I've been working with that in a big way. And I love to, like, I totally am not willing to buy into the whole aging thing whatsoever. I'm like,
Oh, we gotta have a good conversation about that because that's one of
no,
my
this,
favorites.
like, I'm not, no, there's no need for that. So the next level, which is another spiritual gateway, is the level of 500. And the
Okay.
reason why that's significant is because you're now entering the spiritual realm. You're getting out of the mind. Like an interesting point is that Einstein, Freud, genius levels hit 499, and they kind of they hit a wall. They're genius in the mental realm, but they hit a wall in the spiritual realm because they have to let go of the mind to get
What does
into
that mean?
higher truths. Well, you can't rely on the mind.
Okay.
That's not. There's a limited truth. You've got to enter the non-linear realm to realize consciousness is way more massive than we petty little humans think, right? So when you hit 500, this is the level of love. And the reason I want to bring it up now is because Linda Armstrong is focused always on the love, which is
Oh, brilliantly.
super powerful. And true healing and true healers operate from 500 and above.
Ah,
Of
okay.
which, like when you hit 540, which is unconditional love and joy, there's only like a half, 4/10% of the world ever reaches that level.
Hmm.
And then as you go up, it's fewer and fewer and fewer,
Sure.
very few. And this is a good point. His last writing, there were 12 people on the planet that calibrated at 600 above, which is the level of peace. Which you can't, once you hit 500, you're in another realm. When
Hmm.
your whole consciousness is 500 above. I hit 540 very quickly, and then I went higher and higher. But then I crashed because I didn't have the foundation for it. I don't have the foundation, and I had fear and misunderstanding about what's going on. But we all have some of that. So that's how we can kind of, integrate it all. But you need to know that love is the truth and way, way more powerful than you can imagine. But
We
it's
actually
not our
we have a question for
experience.
you
What's
on
that?
this what we're talking about right now. We have a question. One of our audience, the live stream
Okay.
audience. Her name is Saira, and she says, "Is 500 what they call the fourth or the fifth dimension?"
No. Hawkins says Hawkins does not calibrate dimensions as being true. The fifth dimension, as I recall. I'd have to refer back to his. It is a different dimension though when you hit 500. It's a very different experience of life, and feeling the presence of love and divinity is a huge shift when you feel it. And I was in the presence. I could feel the presence of love and divinity and higher, you know, presence. So it's very hard to describe because it's not of this world. But you're in it.
Jeffrey
You're
also
in this world, but not of it.
Jeffrey also has a question. He says, How are these consciousnesses measured externally? And I'm not even sure what he means, but I'll throw it out there and see if you can handle it.
Okay, the measure is done through applied kinesiology or muscle testing. Have you ever heard of that, Walt? Do you
Oh
know what
yeah,
muscle
yeah.
testing is? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
let us do that
So,
another time.
okay, so it's through muscle testing that you would test. You hold a statement in mind. You don't ask a question. You hold a statement in mind, and the body, which is part of consciousness, will respond. Like, so you have an arm out here, and you say a statement, and the body will say, and then you can say, this statement calibrates on the map of consciousness at 200 above. And you just keep going until you go weak, right? So you keep measuring it. And then it's like, no. So then, okay, then it's 150, yes. 175, yes. And you just kind of keep. So he did this with thousands of people and millions of calibrations on thousands of topics.
Hmm.
Super fascinating. He calibrated historic events and people throughout history, authors, music. Super, really interesting books to have as a reference, so you can start recontextualizing what you believe in life. Where's truth? I call myself the trumpeter of truth.
Okay.
And there's all levels of truth, which is
Hmm.
kind of funny. There are different versions of truth. When you get into higher levels, you perceive differently, which is interesting. Now I'm starting to feel it in my own life. You start to feel lovingness, and you
Hmm.
won't judge anybody. You stop judging. As you get into higher levels, you stop judging, and you're just kind of neutral. This is a great way to go, Walt. Neutral is 250 on the map of consciousness. And this, when you decide that you don't have to have a position on anything, you don't have to be right, and you don't have to be in control, it's a huge leap in freedom. I
I believe
experienced this
that.
when I was young, when I
Hmm.
stopped battling with my mother. My mom always had to be right. I finally said, I give.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that I was making a leap into neutrality, which is a leap in consciousness. But it's really kind of a beautiful thing. But right now, there's so much crap about having to be right about everything that it's
Oh
all
yeah.
lower consciousness. Just ignore it. Be neutral. Be neutral
Hmm.
about yourself too, by the way.
What do you
To
mean by
to
that? Neutral.
to stop disparaging yourself. If you
Oh,
catch
okay.
yourself being critical, you're like, whoa, step back
Hmm.
and say, okay, no, I'm going to be neutral. There's
Hmm.
so much power in that, and eventually, I mean, the power of being neutral about yourself is going to bring you into a level where you can start loving yourself and having fun. And if you're not, a lot of people are not loving themselves. So neutral, I always say, go neutral, man. There's so much. I mean, the power is huge when you realize how huge it is.
Mm.
Being neutral
Well, that
and
actually
coming.
raises the question that I've been wondering about since pretty much you started talking about this consciousness scale or these levels or so or however you want to call it, because it's a logarithmic scale, which means
Yeah,
it's hyperbolic in the way that it goes up.
yeah,
Um,
good word.
what yeah. Well, I'm wondering, how did Dr. Hawkins come to the conclusion that it was a hyperbolic scale? How did he know that it was logarithmic? I mean, there's got to be some way that he came to that conclusion.
I didn't understand the the term he used for the it's like a megahertzy Scooby Wooby word that it's a I don't know what the name of the energy. It's a type of energy he's measuring.
Oh, okay.
All right, so he had to use he just I mean he was divinely guided, so he got stuff. I don't know
Hmm.
how he determined it, but he's a scientist. He's a brilliant scientist. I mean he's up there like probably genius level in his mental capacity
Hmm.
as well as spiritual capacity. But the measurement for the consciousness is something I don't even know what it is. It's almost like a wattage or a megahertz or I don't know.
Okay.
So
I mean,
he
Linda
kind of
will
made
tell
it
you I'm
simple.
always interested in the scientific side, so that's why I was
Okay,
curious about
so
that.
I didn't know wasn't familiar with the measurement,
That's okay.
but he made it simple for us by saying, it's 1 to the 10th power. It's all to the 10th, 200th power, blah blah blah. You just keep going up. But there
Yeah.
is a measurement that if you're a scientist, you'd probably know better than I, and it's in his book, Walt. you'll have to tell me what it means because I don't
Oh,
understand
okay.
it. It's definitely scientific numbers. I'm not familiar with.
That's fine.
I did
That's all
great in advanced calculus, and then I hit a wall
right. Yeah.
for some
Understandable. Yeah,
reason.
I ran into the same wall myself, although I found that my wall was more about, I thought that I wanted to learn advanced levels of calculus, and then I found I didn't. I was
Oh,
surprised. I
me
started to
too,
study.
Walt.
You had the same thing. Okay.
Well,
I mean,
I thought I loved advanced calculus, and then I went to do differential equations. That's where I hit the wall. It was like a totally like I was in another world.
hmm
Do
well,
you
they
remember
are.
that?
Differential equations are very abstract.
I thought I was going to have fun with them. I'm like, I had to take an F. I'm like, what? I went from an A in advanced calculus to an F. I'm like, okay, I hit my wall. I've got a different calling.
I,
Uh,
I did struggle at first. I actually got to the point where I was into the A range again, but I realized I just lost interest, and that
yeah.
it was becoming effort. You know how we talk about efforting? Yeah, I was really efforting to get there, and I just didn't see why I'd want to continue with it. Why I'd want, it just seemed like this pointless exercise for me. Like, why am I doing this? And
Well,
so
what
I
did you
just
end up
lost it.
doing, Walt?
What did I end up doing? At that point in my life, actually, I went into banking for a while.
Oh,
I mean, that's left
you
field.
learn, right. Yeah, you learn about finance and money.
Yep.
Hang
And
out with the money.
most of my career was actually tied into computers, and
Oh,
uh,
okay.
I mean, I was one of the very, very early computer adopters. I mean, I got my first computer in 1982, and I mean, I took to it. I was one of those people who it came easily to, so it just kind of became the basis for everything I did after that.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were in high demand.
Now, no, it doesn't even matter anymore because everybody knows how to use a computer. But at the time, it was pretty big.
Yeah, that is huge. Really
Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
anyway, we
interesting.
got up to the love level, and that's where once you get above 500,
Well, you
it's
got the
not of
piece
this
you said
world.
was at 600, and then what's after peace?
Peace, yeah. A peace like you never know. You'd never can imagine that. I mean, even 540 is huge. When I hit 540, I'm like, I am not in Kansas anymore. It's pretty amazing. But there's a downside to making those leaps. I'll just forewarn you if you're not
hmm
ready. And that's the swing. Maybe you've heard of the spiritual swing, like the pyramid. Yeah, or you
Tell
feel
me
it
more.
when you're trying to work on yourself and you hit a high, but then you sink right back down. Have you
Oh,
had
that's
that
normal.
experience? That's
That,
normal, right?
to me, that's normal behavior. That's what happens all the time.
Okay. Because we don't know any better. I didn't know any better. So anyway, when I swung in the opposite direction, equally in the opposite direction. To go from that high to swing to the opposite of that is not pleasant, let me tell you.
That's a fact.
And
Yeah.
confrontation with something you don't want to know exists. Let me just put it that way.
Mm,
So,
wow.
yes, you don't want to go there ever.
So
So,
we're talking about incrementalism here, talking about learning how to move up incrementally and establishing
yes,
a foundation each way,
yeah,
each step of the way.
yes,
hmm
that's the way to go. That's what I'm doing now. And I pray to God every day because I'm like, God, seriously, I'm aware of the presence of God, luckily,
hmm
which is kind of nice. So I just
hmm
talked to God. I'm like, listen, and I laughed because I got myself in a major pickle with this conscious scaling the map of consciousness and swinging back to the other side where you don't want to know, you don't want to go. And I make
hmm
fun of it. I'm like, I'm not in any hurry to jump up there again. Let me tell you, I am not equipped for that encounter ever again. Yeah.
Well,
So I take
ever
it
is the
slow.
long game.
I always say, I'm like, I want to go there, but I want to go there at my own pace. I
Yeah,
don't need to rock the boat.
exactly. Yeah. And it makes sense because when we take one step at a time instead of trying to take 20 steps at a time, well,
Yeah.
first of all, you're not as likely to strain the ligaments of your leg because you're not reaching too far, you
Yes.
know. And
Yeah.
second of all, it fits the Abraham formula. It's easy. It's easy to take
Yes.
small steps. It's only when you're trying to
Yes.
take big steps that you trip and fall and hurt yourself and stub your toe and smash your face
Yeah.
into the ground or whatever.
So here's an interesting little tidbit about this, about taking steps. Hawkins has found that if you move up even 1/10 of a point on the map of consciousness, because it's hyperbolic, right, Walt? It's hyperbolic.
Right.
He said even 1/10 of a point on the map. So if you go from, let's say it's a point, if you go to 300 to 301, it can be life-changing.
Oh, sure.
So little steps. It's still a big step.
It has to be life-changing, because any time that we're changing any part of the way we think about stuff, there's going to be a corresponding experience that comes out of it that's different from what we're used to. How could it not change? It's got to change. It has to.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. He said that based on his studies and his calibrations, most people don't go more than 5 points in a lifetime on the map, which is fine.
Okay.
I mean, we're here forever and a day. What's the hurry?
This is true.
I mean, I've had some experiences 2 or 3 times now where I've been shown eternity. I don't know how to tell you how I've been shown it, but I've experienced
That's
it.
right.
And it's like a out-of-body experience. Like, here, Liz, let me show you what eternity looks like. And you're like, whoa. Slow it down. We got eternity to do this. What's the rush?
What's the rush?
I do not need to leap in my level of consciousness this lifetime. I've gone as high as I need to go. Let's take it slow.
And yet you must have wanted it on some level, because you got there. I mean, you attracted that. You attracted that.
I did.
And it was good for you in some way.
I attracted the opposite too, though, Walt. So I'm like, really? Oh. So it made me wonder.
That's contrast. And what you found is one form of contrast, one more form of contrast that you say no thank you to. And that's okay.
Yes. I didn't want to have to get there to meet it, though. No one else.
Well, you're kind of like Edison with the light bulb, right? He found 10,000 ways now to invent the electric light bulb. That's what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Here's one more way for me not to be enlightened. I don't want to be enlightened that way. No, thank you. Not that way.
Right. There's no rush. Yeah. Many people think they want to have a spiritual awakening. I'm like, well, maybe you don't. Although one little point is a spiritual awakening for people. I had like, I don't know, I think I had 500-point leap. That
huge.
Was a little uncalled for.
Yeah. Well, it knocks you off balance. You don't know how to handle it, so it feels uncomfortable. That's understandable. Yeah. But on the other hand, like Abraham points out, the way they say it more in the negative. I like to turn it into the positive. But they say you can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done. And I turn that around to you always get it right and the road goes on forever, which is basically just flipping the same thing around,
Yes.
But,
I like that.
But when you look at it that way, there was nothing wrong with what you did. What you did was perfectly right for you. It was great. Well, just not where you want to keep going, and that's all.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So here's another good thing for everybody to know. And I have drawn to me higher spiritual guidance and teachers, and understanding that when you get up to the highest levels of consciousness, your perception of the world is everything is perfect. So I use that to my advantage. I'm like, you know what? I feel like crap today, and I want to be all pissy, but everything's perfect. This is perfect. Everything's perfect. It's like, that's the truth.
Yes.
So you can stop judging yourself. You're like, all right, I'm here to be all pissy right now, and okay, I accept that. And then you can laugh about it, and then you shift your consciousness. Like, oh, that was funny.
I agree completely. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. It's perfectly valid. Every single emotion we experience is perfectly valid.
Yeah. And we are sheer perfection right now, Walt, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding.
And everyone on here with us is sheer perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Woohoo.
Although, to be honest, I don't like to think about it that way, just because I can get myself all tied into a knot about perfection. So I just drop the perfection part. But I get your point. Your point is valid.
There are levels of perfectionism that are low level, by the way. Perfectionism is a lower level of consciousness.
Oh, okay.
You're trying too hard. You think you're not enough. Whereas God's point of view of perfection is his, or consciousness's point of view of perfection is from that of sheer beauty and acceptance and knowingness. Our view of perfectionism is not. That's a lower perfectionism. That particular level is a lower consciousness, like in 175 or so. It's where pride and righteousness hang out, is in perfectionism, where you can't manifest there. So.
Well, you can. You're just not going to like it too much.
Right. You can't manifest what you want. I meant to say what you want.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You get what you don't want for sure. Take it from someone who's
Very
good
true.
at that. I'm really good at
Yeah,
that.
right. Well, I think we all are to some degree, but it sounds
Yeah,
like you've had some pretty unique experiences, perhaps, which is good.
Yes.
So, anyway, this has been a great hour. Before we part companies, though, I want to give you the chance to remind people how to find out more about your institute and how to find out more about you as a consciousness coach. So, give some people some contact information.
Okay. So I'm the founder of a website called the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com. And I haven't put together consciousness classes yet, but people keep asking me to. So they will come up, but I have done webinars that I've recorded with. I used to have an online meetup group, Walt, where we met every week, and I give presentations on all different topics, and like Linda would come on and present. And
Oh, fun.
I think once I need to take a break from it. I've been doing it for 2 years, but we have tons of great webinars, and we have some webinars on there where a bunch of members came and we did healing, like live healing, and you can just listen to it. And Linda goes through this healing process during some of those webinars, so you can check that out. She's very good. Mm-hmm. And other healers are on there too that walk you through guided, and they're super yummy. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. So anyway, the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com is where you can find alternative and holistic and energy healers and like medical mediums and intuitives and everything under the sun. And then we have tons of our YouTube channel is the MBS TV, I think, YouTube channel. You can click on our YouTube channel, but we have High Vibe Tribe Q&A interviews, kind of like what we're doing here. So I interview all of our members, so you get to know them better. That's all High Vibe Tribe TV. We have all kinds of content on the network and ways to interact with people and take courses and get some healing, schedule some healing with one of our members. And yeah, I'm trying to put all these alternative healer types into one place so you can find them, because they don't know how to market themselves.
Well, it's a good thing, too. It's nice to have a central portal to handle that kind of thing, because it's going to make it easier for people to find them, regardless of whether people know how to market themselves. There's also the other side. People don't necessarily know how to find stuff. So, yeah.
Right, I know. So I'm kind of a whiz at the whole search thing, too. That's how I got this started, is I'm kind of expert at search engine optimization stuff and helping people do things. So, yeah.
All right. Well, good. Thank you for joining us on the program. I mean, this has been truly enlightening. We're learning about it.
Yes, that's my point.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Thank you.
We're going to have friends in high places that guide me, like, go here, let's go light up some corner of the earth today. All right.
And when you say high places, you mean high. I mean really high.
I'm not kidding. I know how to call them in, baby. They're ever present. I'm like, yes, I accept that.
What we'll have to do is we'll have to have you back sometime when Linda's feeling well, and we can do all three of us together, and I'll bet you we'll create some real high vibration that way.
I would love to do that, Walt. Thank you, and thank you everyone who's out there. Happy to be here and glad to have you listening in today, and loving on Walt.
Yes, thank you to our live stream listeners. Thank you to our regular podcast listeners, without whom we would have a podcast. We really appreciate all of you, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.